is Santino, and I run the DJ Methodz DJ tuition service out of Hull. But my work history, if you like, or experience is very much social work, education, youth work, fostering, always with mental health at the centre of that. So these days I work with lots of people who experience lots of mental health issues.
So my first sort of question was that mental health is talked about so much more, and we're very lucky sort of these days that there's not as much stigma sort of attached to it as there was years ago. I mean, I discussed in the first podcast that I was only at college 10 years ago, and it was still very different then than it is sort of now. So I was just sort of wanting to know whether you struggled when you were younger, when you were in college. Did you find it hard sort of when you was in college?
It's only when I look back now as an adult, influenced by all the work I've done, that I realise just how important it was back then. But I was at college in the early 90s, and at that time, mental health seemed like something that was nothing to do with me.
Yeah.
The term seemed almost frightening, if you like. It was for really poorly people who were either hospitalised or institutionalised. What I didn't realise at that point was just how much my own mental health was affected by my circumstances, my family, parents, friends, how my own outlook, decisions, etc., were all affected by my own mental health. I think the good thing about how we talk about mental health now is that, to be honest with you, even I worked for the local authority as a voice and influence worker sort of 5 years ago when Head Start services were being set up.
Yeah.
And even at that point, people were still talking about mental health being associated with crazy and madness. And I actually think 5 years later, I don't know, I think we've moved on from that.
Absolutely.
Certainly amongst younger people. I think most of the places that I work, people feel a lot more comfortable to openly talk about mental health.
I mean, just sort of as it leads us sort of onto the second topic that we were going to do is like, COVID this year has been so hard for everybody, and something that I find myself, thinking about all the time is these young people that Monday to Friday they get such a social life. They get such, even not just looking at college age, but school age. I mean, my nephew, he's 10, and how awful must that be at 10, at sort of 10 years old or 12 years old, whatever, to be taken, that social side to be taken away, and just like, no, you're actually in your house. You have to deal with your siblings. You have to just answer to mum and dad all the time, because a lot of kids go to school just to get away from whatever's going on at home, or their home life may not be all rosy, and not everybody's is. We're not looking at it through rose-tinted glasses. We know that people find it hard sometimes to be at home, and their safe place is to come to college, and we've taken that away, and it's almost just like everybody's like, oh, well, get on with it. Parents are struggling to homeschool their kids, but how much are kids struggling in this, with this year?
I've seen lots of different things this year, to be fair, and that really, I was looking at this question that you sent me. I think something to do with young people's mental health being talked about, and yes, it is. Every conversation I have with social workers, teachers, youth workers, people who run projects for young people, mental health is like the priority conversation. Some of the money that's available for groups to apply for is very much like the COVID recovery stuff. But what I think is missing, or is still in its early stages of development, is a real understanding of what the response to this is going to be. I keep asking it, if young people's mental health was in crisis before COVID, where is it now?
Yeah.
Where will it be? And people have said, and these are experienced people regularly working with young people, and they feel that we're going to be at breaking point.
Well, yeah, because on one at the end of one of these questions, I've put, do you think that mental health has gone to a point that there's no coming back from that? And I really don't want to think like that, because I am positive 95% of the time, but I worry that we've, like you mentioned, everyone's saying it's a lost generation. I don't think it's a lost generation in regards to skills or the way that they're going. Everybody, if you're willing to put the effort in, can get to where you want to be, whether you've got a qualification, whether you haven't. And that is literally how I look at young people now, and I will say that to them a million times a day. But I just worry for the ones that have been struggling.
I think people are inherently resilient,
yeah,
particularly in very tough times. But yeah, at the same time, the message and the way that we work with young people is crucial. I think it's easy to become pessimistic, if you like, but I think history is littered with people who've come through very tough times, and it's just, taking each day as it comes, isn't it?
Absolutely. And like you say, mental health has been there all the way back to, as far back as you can imagine. But it's like you say, now we understand it a little bit more, and it's informed upon us. So from very young ages, it's told now what mental health is, and if you're feeling not okay that day, then that's fine. Let's talk about it, and let's talk about those feelings and all these things. But a lot of the people that we look back in history, they struggled. But they probably dug deep and worked on themselves and was like, look, and they had that resilient side that we saw more of. Whereas now, like you say, we need to push that a little bit more and realize that there's, you can do whatever. You don't have to have an A star in maths. You don't have to have a degree, to get to where you want to be. If you want those things, that's fine. If you want to get a degree, then you can get a degree, but you don't have to have them to get to where you want to be.
No, absolutely not. I'm fortunate enough to have a very diverse friendship group, and if you were to sit and have a conversation about qualifications and work experience, some of them you couldn't make it up. I've got a friend who's worked in the circus.
I love that. I'd love to work in the circus.
But this is it, isn't it? And it's like, at what point during your school life does the careers officer sit you down and go, okay, so if you want to work in the circus, you're going to need this, this, and this, and you know what I mean? Yeah. It's I think that careers advice has improved over the years, actually, but
yes, I do, but it's like you say, still if you want to be, it was when you were as a kid, everyone, all the boys wanted to be an astronaut and all the girls wanted to be a princess or a hairdresser or whatever. And now, I mean, let's let kids be in the circus. Let's encourage all those.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about saying to people you can be whatever you want, I mean, obviously there has to be a level of realism in that, but I think it's much better than saying, well, you're never going to do that.
Yeah, let's explore that, and let's see, and and you can discuss how hard it's going to be, how the struggles that they might face, and blah blah blah. But if they want to make that decision, then brilliant, off you go, you try. I never, when I was 16 years old, imagined that I would now work in a college and absolutely love my job ever.
Right.
I was adamant that was it. I was going in the police, and now I could not think of anything. I want to work with young people for the rest of my life, and you do change as you get older,
I mean, maybe that is the future, is that I felt blessed, I suppose, to be in a position when I worked in schools to work with young people who maybe were going through very similar experiences to what I did, and I was able to provide advice that hopefully meant they could avoid some of the mistakes I made. I would like to think that some of the young people that are growing up today are going to use those experiences to move into jobs like yours and mine, and provide that kind of support and advice that is needed.
But you've just said something that really, you've just said you work with young people to try and stop them from, or to prevent them from making the mistakes that you've made. But for me, I bet them mistakes made you who you are. I bet them mistakes made you the person that you are today. I'm not saying we should encourage everyone to go down exactly the same path.
No. There's definitely no such thing as a mistake-free life. I guess it's more about damage limitation. Yeah, we do have to go out and learn. We do have to go out and make mistakes. But I guess the type of advice that I might offer to someone might not be as relevant today to a lot of young people at college. I think that just purely comes down to outlook, doesn't it? There's absolutely no way that I see the world the same way as the majority of 16, 17, 18-year-olds now. Just impossible, as much as I'd like to.
What we are.
It does kind of bring us on to your next question, because it was something that I really feel passionate about, is this idea that we've all been through the COVID situation together, and I don't feel that. Yeah, we haven't been through this together. I think that the result of that could be really serious. When I think about going back to, well, this is an eternal issue, really, bullying, but particularly 5 years ago when I was working with Head Start, bullying was one of the issues that young people raised as being in the top 3 issues that cause mental health problems.
Yeah.
And I can't believe that will have changed much in 5 years.
No, I was just going to say, I bet it's exactly the same.
Yeah, well, it could be worse, because I think we're going to get young people mixing together who've had totally different experiences. And obviously young people, or some young people, can be quite cruel and can make funny comments to people without thinking of the consequences. They might not consider it to be bullying, but the person experiencing that can struggle. And I think that's really something that I'm going to be on the lookout for, is talking to people to find out exactly what their experience has been of lockdown and school. And when I talk to adults who work with young people, I do try to say, look, it's really easy now to just talk about mental health, but what are we talking about? Are we talking about anxiety? Are we talking about depression? You could, I'm sure, talk a lot about what you went through in terms of an eating disorder. It's really complex, isn't it? I think still one of the most misunderstood areas of mental health. People assume it's purely about diet, and it really isn't, is it? And
no, and it's something that, for me, I've always sort of said that mental health it's for everybody, and I said this in the first podcast. It's individualized to each person. My mental health I don't associate mental health with the fact that I have an eating disorder. I associate my mental health with the days that I'm the happiest. Why am I the happiest? And what's going on in my mental health to make me feel really happy? And then on the other days, what's making, I have lots of things that affect my mental health. And yes, the eating disorder still affects me now, 12 years down the line. I don't do the things that I did when I was at school, but it's still there. It never leaves. It's never going to leave me. And I think that's what mental health is that everything, no matter what you go through in your life, it stays up here. And it's part of your mental health, whether it's good, bad, ugly, awful. And I want people to talk to us about good mental health, about bad mental health, about unusual mental health. It's everything.
It brings us back to that message, really. I think that we need to understand that everybody is capable of coming through this.
Absolutely, yeah, definitely. So we are on to the next question, which is, and it's an interesting one. What do you think stops people from talking openly? Because there is that small minority of people. Well, I think it's probably larger than we think, but there is those people that aren't ready to talk about it. And do you think there's anything that we could do to encourage them to do that, or do you think there's always going to be certain people that aren't willing to talk about it?
I think there will always be some people that don't. I think if I start with your first question, which was why some people wouldn't, I think that our mental health isn't as visible as our physical health. So a broken leg is a broken leg, and everyone's going to go, well, you need to get that fixed before you can get on with your life kind of thing. Because I've worked closely with and looked after people who experience debilitating mental health conditions, you know, young people who can't do an exam because they can't go into that building, they can't cope with large groups of people, they might hear voices, those types of issues. You know, it's some people, I think, are still afraid to talk about things because they think that people are going to react a certain way, and there are still a lot of people out there that will react.
Yeah.
That kind of understanding, I think, just needs to keep growing. I'm coming across more and more training courses that really do start to get to the core of what's going on. And as an adult, maybe I would still say we're in an age where the majority of adults probably still feel quite worried about who they would speak to. You know, I think the GP is often the first port of call. Many GPs, from my experience, still don't know an awful lot about mental health. You know, they will often just refer, and that might be a good thing in itself. I don't know, as long as they know where you're referring to. But I mean, I've spoken to people who've accessed the talking services for anxiety and stuff, and they've had really mixed results. That again, it's not necessarily talking to the right person, and actually, rather than it help, it's caused more damage. You know, and it's until we can, I don't know if you can guarantee a good response to it, but until we can improve what happens to people when they report a mental health situation, then you're still going to get a lot of people who are worried to do so. You know, I still think, as much as we're talking about it, some of the services are still a long way from being ready.
Something that I considered, and I don't know, it'd be nice to get your opinion on it, actually, was that I think there's a generation. So obviously I'm probably a generation down from you, and then obviously there's the young people that are now a generation down from me. But I think that it will be interesting to look at when the young people that we work with now are the adults and the parents of young people their same age, because I think there'll be a shift then as well. Because I still think the generation that is like my parents are, yes, they know about mental health, but they don't know enough about it. They don't know as much as I do.
Yeah.
But I think there's a generation like above you, you know, that are running this country, that are the GPs there's some GPs that are absolutely amazing, and like you say, it depends who you see. But I just think it'll be interesting to see where we are when these young people that we're talking about now and we're working with are the GPs.
I don't necessarily want to criticise GPs, because I think to do that job in the first place, the amount of information you must have to retain, and this is what I mean by a range of services, not just one port of call. There needs to be, you know, genuinely, if you were to think, I can't get out of bed today, I can't go and do what I'm being paid to do, what do you really do? Do you actually believe you can phone your employer? What if you didn't feel like making that phone call? You know, I still think it's a scary prospect for most people. And this is, you know, again, I remind us that you and I are the kind of people who can probably have a better understanding of how it works. But a lot of people might not even go to a GP. They might, you know, I know some adults who can't go into a school building now as an adult because of something that happened to them when they were younger. And, you know, some people find that ridiculous, but it's true. Now,
but those things do, you know, I mean, it's a really silly story, but I remember once my brother and like my family sat down and we watched Men in Black, like all together. I remember it like it was yesterday.
Yeah. And
I now cannot physically walk past a UPS van without near enough having a panic attack, because I genuinely believe that monster that was in that UPS van from that film is going to come out and get me. And my mum, like, honestly, she's like in fits of laughter every time she sees one coming, because you can see me in the car. Even if I'm in the car, I like tense up. or like when I'm out riding the horse, if there's one coming towards me, I have to like pull in. I have to pull in to whatever I can just to get away from it. Nothing's going to happen to me. It's a UPS van, but that, you know, that was an experience that I've gone through that I cannot. As a 28-year-old adult, I know that nothing's going to happen to me, but I cannot get that out of my head.
You make an absolutely brilliant point, and to bring both of your last points together, actually, this idea of hope for the future. If I think back to when I left school, my first year at college was the first year that people with disabilities mixed with mainstream pupils. Yes, I think you're absolutely right. I think that 10 or 15 years from now, the workforce should be full of people who've grown up in these times and thought these things need changing.
Because there's still the generation now that are, you know, they're the ones that were, yes, they might have heard, it might have been moving on, but like my dad was brought up in a generation where men don't cry, shush,
right,
you're nothing wrong with you. So my dad, yes, he will cry now and he will tell us when he's having a bad day, but he's learnt to do that. So he's still got those things in his head because, like I've said, everything that happens to you stays with you, whether you agree with it, whether you don't agree with it, but he's still got that in his mind. So it will be interesting to see a generation that have, from a very young age, been told that it is okay to have a rubbish day. It is okay not to be okay. And they're going to be the ones that are now bringing up young people. Just to finally sort of wrap it up, what's your top tip for supporting your own mental health, really?
It's a brilliant question, and I think if I was asked the same question every day, I'd probably have a different answer every day.
Yeah.
I've written down loads of stuff based on my own personal life, but then at the same time, I'm not sure that what I do would work for other people. Do you know what I mean? I think it's really about finding something that works for yourself.
Yeah.
I'd like to have two top tips. One would be long term, try and make your life look like you want it to look. And short term, whatever makes you feel good in the moment. I call it positive selfishness, to be fair. As long as you're not hurting somebody else. You know, if you need to watch TV for an hour, or if you need to eat your favorite food, if you know, whatever it is, listen to your favorite music, just do it.
I like that. I like that positive selfishness. Like you say, I do that. You know, I'm not hurting anyone. I didn't hurt anyone on Sunday by sitting and watching 8 hours of TV. You know, and I really like that. You know, that's something I'm going to take from that. Actually, I like that phrase, positive selfishness. Absolutely.